I don't think we're going to necessarily ask for a declaration of war. I think we're just going to kill people that are bringing drugs into our country.
It started with a scene that looked impossible to believe. An MH-60 Seahawk dropped so low its rotors shredded the ocean spray, and Navy SEALs began firing directly into a Cartel Speedboat racing across the Caribbean. Commanders had authorized lethal force because the boat they were chasing was part of a cocaine network worth more than $100 million. The moment the hull finally cracked and the engine died, agents rushed in expecting smugglers and contraband. What they uncovered instead shocked every agency involved and exposed the true scale of the cartel empire hiding behind that single boat. Hunting the ghost boat. The night sea looked calm on the surface, but every person aboard the massive destroyer could feel the weight of the mission pressing in. The USS Winston S. Churchill moved through the dark water with a steady pulse, its hull cutting the waves as if the ocean had already stepped aside for it. The ship carried close to 9,000 tons of steel and firepower, yet no one relied on size alone. Its radar dome kept sweeping the horizon, drawing in signals from a battle space so wide it felt endless. Inside the operations center, the screens glowed with shifting shapes and contacts. The SPY-1 Delta V radar tracked aircraft far beyond the visible sky and every surface object within a region that stretched over more than 60,000 miles. No one spoke louder than necessary. The steady vibration under their boots reminded them that the ship moved at 18 knots, and it would not slow down until the job was done. Hidden among the sailors was a team with a different purpose. Coast Guard, Ledet 404 carried the authority the Navy did not. They were armed, trained, and quietly waiting. Only they could make arrests once the target was found. Their presence meant the mission would not end with a chase. It would end with hands on the suspects and the contraband secured. Far beyond the Churchill, two Coast Guard cutters fought the heavy swells with raw speed. Their hulls rose and fell across the waves as they pushed 28 knots, closing the distance with every minute. Aboard each vessel, tacklet teams checked their weapons, tightened their gear, and prepared for close quarters combat. They knew the smugglers would not surrender easily. The sea was a lawless place until someone forced order onto it. Yet none of the assets at sea mattered unless the one in the air made its mark. High above the water, a Navy P-8 Poseidon moved through the early morning haze. The aircraft looked like a commercial airliner from afar, but inside it carried advanced sensors that could cut through clouds and darkness. Its synthetic aperture radar traced patterns across the region. Its electro-optical and infrared system watched for heat signatures. Its magnetic anomaly equipment searched for anything concealed below. The crew were hunting for something small enough to disappear against the water, yet fast enough to outrun most ships. A low-profile speedboat with no running lights. It was moving at high speed with no transponder. The operators scanned until their eyes burned. At 6:14 in the morning, the radar feed shifted. A tiny boat darted across the compound screens, speed 50 knots, bearing 270. Range 15 miles. The radio came alive. Poseidon 3 to all units. Target identified. Moving west. No transponder. Vessel matches the profile. The message rolled through every deck and every cabin like a shot. On the destroyer, officers called out commands as the ship swung into a new heading. Metal groaned under the turn. Engines surged. Coast Guard members grabbed their gear and took positions along the rail. The cutters tightened their formation and surged forward, punching through the swells with renewed determination. On the Poseidon, the crew held their lock, tracking the vessel with absolute focus. The smugglers had no idea that every move they made was being watched from sea and sky. They were already inside the jaws of a mission built to close fast and strike hard. The real cause behind this chase becomes clear once you see what these smugglers were tied to. The cartel's new route. A heavy silence had settled over the investigation unit months before the chase at sea even began. Miami agents had been working long hours, watching patterns shift across screens while quiet conversations hinted at something far darker moving beneath the surface. Every lead pointed to one group, Los Sinaloa. Their reach stretched from dense mountain regions of Mexico all the way into American cities, leaving a trail of bodies, broken families, and entire neighborhoods drowning in addiction. Cocaine destroyed sleep and judgment. Meth and heroin tore minds apart. Fentanyl ended lives so quickly that first responders barely had time to react. Hospital workers saw overdoses climb year after year. Parents who once begged for help now stood at grave sites. Detectives knew the cartel had caused waves of destruction that could be seen in morgue reports and police records across the country. While that devastation grew, the FBI worked quietly behind closed doors, gathering every scrap of intelligence they could. Wiretaps captured coded conversations filled with strange references that later made sense. Data extractions from encrypted phones revealed meeting points and offshore purchase orders. Informants flipped after realizing the cartel would not spare them if anything went wrong. Unmarked vehicles trailed suspected couriers for weeks. Surveillance rooms glowed through the night as agents studied heat signatures on infrared monitors and intercepted calls routed through foreign servers. All that effort revealed a shift no one expected. Los Sinaloa was abandoning land routes. They were finished with truck convoys weaving through border checkpoints. They no longer relied on secret desert routes or hidden airstrips where small planes slipped in and out at night. They had turned their attention to the ocean, a place harder to police, a place with long distances, limited patrol coverage, and deep waters that swallowed evidence without hesitation. The cartel's new plan was dangerous because of how simple it was. They designed a vessel that could outrun nearly every patrol craft on the water. A true ghost boat. It was made entirely of fiberglass and shaped to skim just above the surface, which allowed it to produce almost no radar signature. The crew would launch it from remote coves along the Pacific coastline of Colombia, where the terrain offered perfect hiding places. They would load the hull with more than 4,000 pounds of cocaine worth millions of dollars and prepare the craft for a covert run. Every light would remain off, and the transponder would stay inactive so no tracking system could detect it. The boat would carry twin outboard engines with a combined 900 horsepower, which meant it could reach speeds of more than 50 miles per hour in open water. At that speed, it could leave a white trail of spray behind it before most sensors even registered movement. The crew operating the vessel had one mission. They needed to push north, reach the handoff zone, and deliver the cargo to another team waiting farther offshore. Once the exchange was complete, they would turn back toward Colombia and disappear into the open ocean without leaving evidence of their route. When agents reviewed the intelligence reports, many felt a sense of urgency. A boat with that level of speed and stealth could move across large stretches of ocean in only a few hours. Investigators continued to dig into the case and realized that this trip was likely not the cartel's first attempt. They found signs that smaller test runs had already taken place, and that the method had been refined over time. The more the agents uncovered, the more concerned they became. Every new detail pointed to a larger operation already in motion, and the people behind it showed no signs of slowing down. Operation Ocean Strike. Agents knew what waited on the other side of failure. Once that load reached the mainland, it would vanish into street networks that moved faster than most analysts could track. Families would face another wave of overdoses before sunrise. Emergency rooms would overflow. The cartel would walk away with a fortune so large it could bankroll new routes, new bribes, and new violence. This time, the threat was larger than anything the Bureau had tracked in months. The shipment was already on open water, and every passing hour gave the crew more distance. If the smugglers reached a receiving point, the product would break apart into smaller loads that would disappear across the region. That looming reality forced the Bureau to move without hesitation. One phone call set off a chain that reached far beyond Miami. Within a short time, a joint force took shape. FBI analysts gathered intelligence packets and pushed them across secure networks. Coast Guard units prepared their cutters for extended pursuit. United States Navy aviators were brought in to cover the miles of open water that smaller aircraft could not reach. Encrypted channels lit up. Maps of projected routes were updated in real time. Satellite sweeps were requested. Every team locked into a schedule that left no room for error. There was also another layer brewing in Washington. Months earlier, the administration had increased pressure on maritime smugglers after a series of large seizures showed how quickly the cartels were shifting their tactics. President Trump directed agencies to take a harder stance at sea, giving more authority to act against vessels suspected of carrying narcotics. That meant patrols could move in faster, disable engines, or even sink vessels when the threat level reached a certain point. It changed how operations were carried out and offered federal units more freedom to strike before a shipment reached territorial waters. With that authority behind them, the task force sharpened its approach. Surveillance aircraft were placed on standby. A cutter was moved toward the projected path of the boat. Teams prepared for a night pursuit through waters where weather and currents could turn without warning. Every second mattered because the vessel was already pushing north at frightening speed. That was when the operation received its formal name. Operation Ocean Strike, a title meant to capture the urgency of stopping a load that could flood entire regions with narcotics. Its objective was simple but brutal. Locate the boat in international waters, close the distance, take control before dawn. Reports soon confirmed that the vessel had maintained its pace and stayed dark. No tracking signals, no visible lights. A machine built for speed slipping across water that stretched for hundreds of miles. The chase was no longer a question of planning. It was now a countdown. The Coast Guard's chase. All the planning, all the intelligence came down to this single moment on the open water, with the sun rising on a scene of high-stakes chaos. Inside the massive hangar bay of the USS Winston S. Churchill, the air was thick with the smell of jet fuel and tension. A team moved around an MH-60 Seahawk helicopter, performing a final hurried check. Its rotors were folded, but it looked like a bird of prey ready to strike. Fuel tanks were full, weapons were locked and secured, and a new team was now on board, Hydron. These were the Coast Guard's elite sharpshooters, the very best marksmen trained for one brutal task. They could stop a boat dead in the water with precision fire from a hovering helicopter. As the sun finally broke the horizon, a lookout on the fast response cutter shouted and pointed. There it was, a white, low-profile speedboat, its hull slapping the waves. Two massive Yamaha outboard engines on the back roared like angry animals. The boat flew no flag. It had no markings. It was exactly what the intelligence from Miami had said would appear. A voice crackled over the marine radio from the cutter. It issued a command to the unidentified vessel, ordering it to stop its engines immediately and prepare to be boarded. The only reply was a sudden, violent surge of power. The smugglers shoved both throttles forward as far as they would go. The engine's scream became a high-pitched shriek. A huge plume of white water exploded from the stern as the boat lifted onto its plane, its nose pointing to the sky. Its speed shot past 50 miles per hour in a heartbeat. They were not stopping. They were running for their lives. In response, the cutter launched its own weapon. A 26-foot-long over-the-horizon pursuit craft hit the water with a crash. This was an armored boat carrying a full tactical interdiction team. It leaped across the wave tops, its own engines howling as it began the chase. The smugglers fought back, twisting their boat in wild, desperate zigzags. They threw great sheets of salt water into the air, trying everything to break the cutter's intercept course and escape into the vast ocean. Then the sound changed. A new, deeper thunder joined the chaos. From the deck of the destroyer, the Seahawk helicopter was now in the air. Its rotors hammered at the sky, a punishing rhythm that echoed across the water. It moved with terrifying speed, a dark shape closing the distance in a matter of seconds. The smugglers looked up. For the first time, they saw the full, overwhelming force arrayed against them. Pure panic took over. One of the men on the boat started frantically grabbing plastic-wrapped bricks from a hidden compartment and hurling them over the side. Each brick was a block of pure cocaine. Each one was worth a fortune. Splash after splash, a trail of millions of dollars sank into the deep blue sea. It was a desperate attempt to destroy the evidence, but despite the panic, despite jettisoning their cargo, the smugglers made one critical choice. They kept their engines wide open, pushing their boat to its absolute limit, the shutdown. Inside the shaking Seahawk, a hit-run marksman braced himself. He pressed the stock of his high-powered rifle tight against his shoulder. His eye was fixed on the scope. He was not aiming at the men. His target was the machine that gave them power. A single well-placed shot could end everything. The authorization came through his headset. He was cleared to fire. The order was specific: disable the vessel only. Target the engines only. The marksman took a slow, steady breath. His finger tightened on the trigger. The first shot cracked over the water. It hit the starboard outboard engine. A flash of sparks erupted. A small flame burst out. Thick black smoke poured from the motor as its internal parts locked up solid. He shifted his aim. The second shot rang out. This bullet tore directly into the heart of the other engine. Metal screamed and broke. The power died instantly. The speedboat jerked violently. It swerved sideways, skidding across the water like a slipping toy. Then it went quiet, rocking helplessly in the sudden silence. The chase was over. The crew below moved in fast. The pursuit craft reached the disabled boat and the team climbed aboard. The two men inside looked worn down by the chase. Their hands were shaking. Their movements were slow, as if everything in them had locked up the moment the engines died. They offered no fight. They said nothing loud. They simply raised their hands and waited. The officers checked every corner of the craft. No firearms, no hidden blades. Only the cargo stacked under tarps and tied in layers along the floor. Each bundle carried a heavy weight that gave off a sharp chemical smell once exposed. There were more than 2 tons of cocaine packed inside the go-fast boat. The exact amount came to a little over 4,400 pounds, enough to bring $100 million in bulk sales. Enough to multiply that value many times once it hit the streets. Every bale was placed on the deck of the pursuit craft. Photographs were taken, labels marked each one. The logs were entered into the digital chain of custody system that kept track of every ounce. The smugglers were told of the charges they now faced. Federal agents took their phones. The coordinates of the arrest were recorded. Both men were moved into custody and prepared for transfer to a federal facility where they would wait for trial. Their future now tied to long sentences. The damaged vessel sat on the water with a slow tilt. It had no registration, no legal markings, no purpose other than crime. It could not be left behind. The order to sink it came soon after. A shaped charge was fixed to the hull by one of the technicians. When it detonated, the sound rolled across the water like a deep thump. The boat shook once and began to drop. The sea swallowed it without struggle, leaving only bubbles rising in a thin line. The boat was gone, but the information pulled from it was already making its way to analysts who would use it to plan the next strike. The hidden network. ... The The moment the smugglers were taken away, the attention shifted to something even more valuable than the huge load of cocaine: their phones. The devices were soaked with sweat and ocean spray, but the data inside remained untouched. Investigators laid everything out on a metal table aboard the cutter. Bright lights lit up the screens while agents worked through each file. The glow showed rows of contacts, coded messages, strange icons, and call logs stretching back months. Nothing on those phones was harmless. Every detail had weight. The air in the room felt heavy as the analysts began sorting through the information. They traced numbers across borders. They unlocked encrypted threads. Messages lined up with known meeting points used by cartels. Timestamps matched patterns that intelligence teams had been watching for months. Every text, every call log, every digital footprint became a live wire leading to new targets. This was not just data. It was a roadmap to the cartel's heart. Once the connections became clear, teams on land moved fast. Within weeks, the intelligence pulled from the phones sparked a chain of operations across Central America. 3 more boats carrying narcotics were stopped before they reached the coast. 5 individuals tied to transport networks were arrested. 2 hidden safe houses used by cartel members were breached. Officers found maps, cash, radios, and records that linked directly back to the group behind the Go Fast boat. None of this came from luck. The entire operation had worked like gears inside a single machine. FBI intelligence teams handled the digital tracing. The U.S. Navy provided sensors, long-range coverage, and aviation support that tracked the movement of vessels far from the coastline. The Coast Guard handled the chase, the boarding, and the seizure. Each branch had its own job, but they moved with one purpose that day. Operation Ocean Strike sent a clear, cold message to every cartel leader from Mexico to Colombia. You can build the fastest boat. You can push your engines to 50 miles per hour. You can try to lose yourself in the thousands of miles of empty ocean. But it does not matter. The United States has the technology. It has the patience. It has the will. We will find you. We will chase you. We will stop you. Whether under the blazing sun or in the dead of night, in calm seas or in howling storms, the hunt never ends. The operation that changed the tide. Not every crew met their fate in handcuffs. In September 2025, the rules of engagement shifted from disable to destroy. A United States military operation targeted a vessel from Venezuela that was suspected of carrying a massive load of illegal narcotics. There was no warning, no demand to stop. In a sudden, silent flash from the sky, the boat was hit. It erupted into a ball of orange fire and black smoke. The vessel was torn apart, its structure instantly shattered. When the smoke cleared, only burning wreckage remained on the water's surface. The mission was over in seconds. President Donald Trump addressed reporters at the White House shortly, announcing that U.S. forces had just destroyed a drug-carrying boat. He stated that the vessel had been carrying a large quantity of drugs and warned that there were many more like it. He specifically identified Venezuela as the point of origin for the shipment. Later, on his Truth Social platform, he shared a video. The footage, apparently from overhead drones, showed a speedboat at sea. The craft was seen exploding violently, then burning on the water's surface. The president confirmed that the strike had killed 11 terrorists. He reported that no American forces were harmed during the operation. U.S. intelligence had identified the crew as members of Tren de Aragua, a Venezuelan gang that the U.S. had designated a terrorist group earlier that year. He also said that the gang worked under the control of Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro, a charge that Caracas has rejected many times. Venezuela's communications minister issued a sharp response. Officials called the accusations false. The Pentagon itself remained quiet, refusing to release specific details about the attack. They did not confirm the type or amount of drugs on board, nor did they explain exactly how the strike was carried out. What is clear is that the United States had already deployed several large ships to the southern Caribbean. The goal was to show strength after the promise made by Trump to fight cartels with direct force. The strike seemed to be the first open action in that region. 7 United States warships were either in place or moving toward the waters. A nuclear-powered fast attack submarine was also on the way. More than 4,500 sailors and Marines were set to join the mission. Though the Coast Guard and Navy often operate in the area, this movement was far larger than anything seen in recent years. The aggressive action sparked immediate controversy. The administration faced criticism both at home and abroad regarding the legality of the boat strikes. Lawmakers from both major political parties expressed deep concerns that the attacks violated U.S. and international law. Some key NATO allies distanced themselves from the operation. The United Kingdom reportedly went so far as to withhold its intelligence on Latin American drug smuggling at sea, due to fears that the American campaign might be illegal. The Trump administration defended the aerial attacks. Officials described them as a legal action against a direct threat to national security and an effective new method for fighting narco-traffickers. Looking back at the entire operation, from the first radar ping to the final explosive end, a clear picture emerges. It began with a patient, high-tech hunt for a single ghost boat, a vessel loaded with over 2 tons of cocaine racing across the Pacific. That capture was a masterpiece of coordination. The Navy's eyes in the sky, the Coast Guard's legal authority, and the FBI's intelligence all came together to stop the smugglers, seize their cargo, and gather the phones and data that would lead to more raids. That was the scalpel approach, precise, legal, and focused on evidence. This final moment, the strike on the Venezuelan vessel, felt like a sharp turn in the path. Instead of stopping a boat and capturing the crew, the mission turned into open fire. The response was not a disabling shot from a sniper, but a full military strike from the air. This was the sledgehammer. The same mission can have 2 utterly different conclusions. One ends with a courtroom, the other with a crater. The buildup of ships, the legal debate, the anger from Venezuela, and the shock of the strike all showed how complex this fight had become. Now that you have seen every part of this chain of events, it is worth asking something simple. How far should a nation go when it believes a threat is coming across the water? Is there a point where a drug shipment becomes a legitimate military target, justifying lethal force? What do you think? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.